many times is it that the head of the school is quoting Dr. Seuss and the valedictorian's quoting C.S. Lewis? All the time here. I want to introduce the commencement speaker. Last year we brought a lot of chapel speakers in, and we finally asked the kids, what do you think about chapel? Who would you like to speak? And they said, we want the staff to speak. That's who we know and love, and our students are very discriminating about transparency and honesty and the heart of the speaker. Beware of those that come to Grace Prep and are not transparent and try to be spiritual. It will not go well. So as we make our rounds, I've been very excited to introduce Kathy Sealand, who's our science teacher, a Bible teacher. She's a State College native, loves the town, but has a great appreciation for the world at large. She graduated from Wheaton College with a BS in biology, and then her and her husband, Matt, headed for the mission field and lived in the jungles, whatever it's called, like huts and stuff, jungle, right? Bush. For 16 years in Papua New Guinea. Kathy taught 9th grade science and high school biology. She is a Berean. If you don't know what that is, that's a person that breathes the word, that tests everything against the word. She loves the word. She is feisty. She gets in my face all the time, so I get back in hers. She's opinionated, and she's usually right. But not always. And I am the one that decides who's right or who's wrong in the staff meetings. Kathy was valedictorian at State College High School, weren't you? She hates me for saying that, but that tells you something, doesn't it? And I am so proud. The kids are so excited to hear Kathy Sealand do their commencement address. I want to introduce her now. Give a round of applause for Kathy Sealand.
One time when I stood up at chapel to counter something somebody said, I had my Bible in my hand, and I remember Tim whispering to somebody, she's armed. So I feel like I've come armed. It's a privilege. I'm looking at them. Oh. It's just like class, right? It's a privilege to be the last to officially address you. I didn't dress you, address you. And, you know, for the last month or so, I've found myself thinking about the fact that you're leaving, and I've been thinking about, what do I want them to know before they go? And I think that you know one thing that I've ranted about over and over again, well, two things you're going to remember that I've ranted about, is the 3 best decisions I've made in my life are to love the Lord, to marry my man, and to have my kids. And I was out in the yard the other night, it was late, and the dog was out, and the stars were great, and the sky was clear, and I thought, you know what, I really need to add a 4th thing to that list. Because really the best things I've done in my life are love the Lord, marry my man, have my kids, and teach. And teaching you guys has been one of the greatest things I've done. And it's been a blessing to watch you grow and to speak into your lives and to be a part of that. And I was thinking that I taught all of you once, but I'm looking at you, I've taught all of you more than once. Meade likes to claim that I've taught him more than anyone else. But since I've taught all of you multiple times, I really hope that you know what I'm going to say to you. And I think you do. If I could send you out into the world with one last piece of advice, one way to walk through life well, it would be to encourage you once again to be people of the Word. And Bob told you that that's probably what I was going to tell you anyway. If you leave with nothing else, I'm challenging you to leave with a commitment to spend considerable time in Scripture. And I think Mrs. Head would probably call this circular reasoning, but today we're going to use the Word to tell you why you should be people of the Word. So let's read Psalm 19. Psalm 19 tells us, "The heavens tell of the glory of the Lord. The skies display his marvelous craftsmanship. Day after day they continue to speak, and night after night they make him known. They speak without a word, a sound or a word. Their voice is silent in the skies, yet their message has gone out to all the earth, and their words to all the world. The sun lives in the heavens where God placed it. It bursts forth like a radiant bridegroom after his wedding, and it rejoices like a great athlete eager to run the race. The sun rises at one end of the heavens and follows its course to the other end. Nothing can hide from its heat. The law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. The decrees of the Lord are trustworthy, making wise the simple. The commandments of the Lord are right, bringing joy to the heart. The commands of the Lord are clear, giving insight into life. Reverence for the Lord is pure, lasting forever. The laws of the Lord are true. Each one is fair. They are more desirable than gold, even the finest gold. They are sweeter than honey, even honey dripping from the comb. They are a warning to those who hear them. There is great reward for those who obey them. How can I know the sins lurking in my heart? Cleanse me from these hidden faults. Keep me from deliberate sins. Don't let them control me. Then I will be free of guilt and innocent of great sin. And may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Psalm 19 has a lot to say to us, and I hope you'll take it with you. Many of you are going to be leaving home in the next few months. You might be going to Ohio or Indiana or Oklahoma. Ivy's flying across the world in a couple hours on her way back to Korea. Some of you are staying home, and that's okay. But no matter where you're headed next, I can pretty much guarantee you that you will change your residence a few times in life. You're going to change your dwelling. And I'm guessing you probably knew the word dwell was going to make its way into this speech, I guess you call it. Dwell can simply mean to reside. And it can also mean to exist in a given state or a place. But dwell can also mean to fasten your attention on something. So no matter where you live, based on Psalm 19, I want to encourage you to fasten your attention on, to exist in the state of, really to dwell in three different places. First, I want to encourage you to dwell in the vastness of God. Secondly, I want to encourage you to dwell in the pages of Scripture. And thirdly, I want to encourage you to dwell in obedience. The psalm begins with, "The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies display his marvelous craftsmanship. Day after day they continue to speak. Night after night they make him known." I think Scripture tells us to dwell in creation, or I'm going to use the term in the vastness of God. Just a few weeks ago, you all stood on the edge of an ocean together. And then a couple weeks after that, you stood at the top of Mount Nittany. Some of you have flown across the Pacific Ocean. And I'm guessing pretty much every one of you has laid out on the lawn on a starry night and just enjoyed the marvelous handiwork. You've had that experience. Somehow we love to feel small in comparison to his largeness. Think about those times. When you think about them, you realize it's really hard to feel anything but peace or joy when you're in that situation. In the words of Ann Voss Camp, "When I stand before the immensity that heightens my smallness, I have never felt sadness." Someday, you're going to be rushing to get somewhere. Maybe you're going to be late to work. Maybe you're going to be late getting home from work. Maybe like me, it's going to be 10 o'clock at night, and you're going to go, "There's no milk in the house, there's no bread in the house, there's no cereal in the house. What are they going to eat tomorrow morning?" And you'll be driving to the grocery store. You might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed. And suddenly you'll see that big moon rising in the sky. I think they called it a supermoon a few weeks ago. And you will remember that you are small and he is really, really big. It's funny how wonder and worship grow out of a recognition of our own smallness. And so, practically speaking, I encourage you to put yourself in places where you can experience his largeness. Go to the beach. Go to South Dakota and sleep in the Badlands. Drive across the state of Nebraska. I went out of my way to do that. I wouldn't do it again, but it's vast. Walk through the canyon at Fisherman's Paradise. Stand in the middle of a farmer's field. I was outside real early this morning, and it was cold and windy, and it was amazing. So I encourage you to put yourself in places to dwell in the vastness of God. Psalm 19 also gives us really good reason to dwell in Scripture. It says, "The law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. The commands of the Lord are right, bringing joy to the heart." Today, most of you, besides the teary, sentimental part, most of you are flying high, and you should be. You've accomplished a really great thing. You made it through, as I think Bob said. You can't hide from us academically, and you've accomplished something, and you've all done well. But I know that each of you have experienced, and I can guarantee that each of you will experience situations where you need to have your soul revived. It's hard sometimes to leave home. Sometimes it's hard to stay home. That first week of finals in college is probably going to be pretty rough on some of you. Someday, you might find yourself with 3 kids under 3. Sleep will be a treasure. And just maybe one of those kids will have meningitis when he's 10 days old. Or just maybe he'll have an aneurysm when he's 8. Or maybe with those 3 little kids, you'll find yourself laying on the floor, sick as a dog, with hepatitis B, 8,000 miles from home, wondering where your mom is. And then maybe just a few years later, you'll be standing next to that mother who's stoned on painkillers, throwing up in the sink, and asking you, when can I actually die from this cancer? And I'm not trying to be a downer on your graduation day, but I can promise you that when you walk through life, you will find times that you need to have your soul revived. But if you dwell in Scripture, if you spend time there, you will know that the Lord is your shepherd and that he gives you everything that you need. You will know that the Lord has plans for you, plans to prosper you and give you hope. If you dwell in Scripture, you will know that he gives strength to the weary, even if it's just weary from having 3 kids under 3. Or he gives strength to the weary when it's a really big problem, like a really sick kid. And you will know, if you dwell in Scripture, that all things work together for the good of those who love him. Dwell in Scripture because it revives the soul and brings joy to the heart. Psalm 19 also tells us that the commands of the Lord are clear, giving insight into life. Dwelling in Scripture gives us insight into life. It helps us know what is important and what our priorities should be. Scripture tells us it's better to give than receive. Scripture tells us we should be caring for the widows and orphans, like we've just seen. Scripture tells us that coveting just makes you unhappy, but thankfulness, that'll bring you joy. Scripture tells us that what we really need to be doing is loving God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And it tells us that those folks around us, even the ones that live in the same homes that we do, they're our neighbors, and we should be loving them as ourselves. Practically speaking, dwelling in Scripture is going to help you make good decisions in life. Decisions that help you glorify God and enjoy him forever. Did you know I'd get that one in there too? They know. Someday, you might find yourself on a first date with a boy that you're actually quite smitten with. And you'll listen to yourself tell him that you want to be a biomedical engineer and live in a penthouse in New York City. But this boy, he's going to be a missionary. And through Scripture, Maybe through the book of Colossians that tells you that all things are created for him, by him, and for him. You might get an eternal perspective, and you might trade the penthouse in New York City for a house up on stilts in a mosquito-filled swamp in a country full of people that need to know Jesus. Dwell in Scripture because it will give you insight into life. And Psalm 19 promises us that Scripture will make you wise. The decrees of the Lord are trustworthy, making wise the simple. Scripture does not promise us that we will walk through an easy life, but it does promise us a way to walk through life well. I know that you're all smart. I've taught you. Like Caleb said, he's done school. Like, I know how smart you are. But like me, though you've all excelled in school, though you've played the game well, I hate to tell you this, but you're simple, okay? You're simple in what really matters in life, and I am too. Someday you might find yourselves married. I got married when I was 20, and though I married a really easy man, he married a very difficult woman, as Bob's already told you. Scripture will tell you how to do marriage well. The sooner you learn to be like Christ, and the sooner that you model Christ, who according to the book of Philippians did not demand his rights and cling to them, but humbled himself and became a servant, the sooner you will learn to walk through marriage well. And then one day you might have an infant, a newborn, on your lap, and she might cry. And you might tell her that it's okay, Aunt Kathy will take care of you. And your sister might look at you and go, you're not that one's aunt. This one's yours to train and teach and raise. And suddenly you will feel very, very simple. And if you don't, you're a fool. That child may grow up. And even though you and your husband and all your brothers and sisters went to a Christian college, she may choose not to. She may even choose to go to a military academy. Or perhaps that newborn that's in your lap will tell you that really she wants to join a dance company instead of going to a traditional college. Dwell in Scripture, because if you parent, you will feel simple and you will want to be wise. Scripture will make you wise. You will see that Jesus was both a lawgiver and a life giver. You will see that he called sin, sin, and he turned over the tables in the temple, but you will also see that he cooked fish for his disciples on the shores of a lake. He cared for them as well as taught them truth. Dwell in Scripture, because you will see that love is patient and kind, but you will also see that love does not rejoice in wrongdoing. It rejoices in truth. Dwell in Scripture, because it will make you wise and help you walk through life well. You have access to something that revives the soul, brings joy to the heart, gives insight into life, and makes the simple wise. It's sweeter than honey, and it's more desirable than gold. And if I could sit where you are and do it again, I would dwell in Scripture much more and much earlier than I started. Don't waste it. Use it and read it. Dwell in Scripture. Psalm 19 tells us that the laws of the Lord are true. They are a warning to those who hear them. But there's more than just a warning in the laws of the Lord. It says there is great reward for those who obey them. So finally, I challenge you to dwell in obedience. Dwell in Scripture, know the laws of the Lord, and then reap the rewards of obeying it. Psalm 19 ends with, cleanse me from these hidden faults, keep me from deliberate sins, don't let them control me. Then I will be free of guilt and innocent of great sin. And finally, David writes, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord my God, or Lord my rock and my redeemer. Dwelling in obedience often begins with the words of our mouth in the meditations of our hearts. Guard your heart, because it is the wellspring of life. And watch your words, because they reflect your heart. Dwelling in obedience comes from an understanding of the God of creation and really knowing his law. So as you go, wherever you are headed, dwell in the vastness of God, dwell in the pages of Scripture, and reap the great rewards of dwelling in obedience to him. Can you guys do that? Dwell.